Now pulling away from the boyhood home of President Jimmy Carter in Archery, a very small agricultural community in southern Georgia, thinking about a man who, against all odds, had these humble, simple, poor beginnings in Georgia, a peanut farmer who then would ascend to the highest office in the country and the most powerful position in the world as the motorcade for day one of the state funeral begins leaving Archery now and headed towards Atlanta. I was thinking about a man who you could say in so many instances the phrase against all odds. So against all odds has beginnings in this part of the world that you're looking at now to ascend to the White House. An advisor once said, you have to understand, nobody knew who he was. You just pick a name out of the phone book. They would have had as much of an opportunity to win that presidential election, yet he made it there. And against all odds, lived to be 100 years old, despite a brain cancer diagnosis in 2015, some very serious falls in the years after. And here he made it a few months beyond a 100th birthday.
I think the one real consistency of his life also he has always been an advocate for poor people across the racial spectrum. He, from the time that he began in politics, or even before politics, to his final breaths, always an advocate for those in need. And we are joined right now by a longtime friend, personal attorney of President Carter, sits on the advisory board of the Carter Center. Terry Adamson is with us this morning.
Yeah, Adamson, he also worked for the Department of Justice. He's a special assistant to the Attorney General and also chief spokesman.
The list of titles go on and on. We appreciate your time as you've been watching the images here with us together, that look at his boyhood home there. Maybe a glance that some people who are joining us today have never seen that before. What's going through your mind as someone who worked so closely next to him for so long, Mr. Adamson?
Well, just tons of memories, like so many others. I'm enjoying your coverage and enjoying the coverages of so many personal stories about people's interrelations with the Carters, Roosevelt and Jimmy.
You know, Terry, the first time you met Jimmy Carter, you were in high school. He was in the state legislature. Do you remember that moment?
I do. He didn't. I was in high school, and my debate team was taken to the General Assembly to be introduced right behind the Watermelon King and the Orange Queen. But and my debate coach was a state senator, and his desk was right next to Jimmy Carter's, and that's when I first met him. That was 62 years ago. I can't say that we were friends that long, but we were certainly acquaintances by that time, and we had many relationships and interrelations over the years.
And you became a newspaper writer where you were covering soon-to-be Governor Carter's campaign. What stands out all these years later about that campaign, of first really statewide success for him?
It was his first successful election statewide. He'd run in 1966 first, and he ran against former Governor Carl Sanders in 1970. And I was a green cub reporter on the Atlanta Constitution staff, and ultimately I was assigned to the political desk. I was the junior most person on the political desk under the legendary Bill Shipp.
Oh, yeah.
And as it was in those days, I often had to go out with Carter and cover his campaign on a daily basis for several months. And it was quite an experience for me to get to know Jimmy Carter. It was just usually him, Jody Powell would be driving, and me in the back seat. And it would be rural hamlets just like Archery all over Georgia, where he would just shaking hands with Georgians everywhere, and he, of course, won the election.
As we look at Plains Live here, you know, we hear so much about authenticity, humility, that connection you're talking about as he would shake hands with people. From your interactions with him in those years, Terry, talk about him, you know, also as tough and with an extraordinary work ethic. I understand it was a lot of hard for people to keep up with him sometimes. He was a tough boss.
Well, he was a very demanding person to those around him, but he set the example. He was hard on himself. And so it inspired everyone else to work hard. But a work ethic there's no doubt about Jimmy Carter's work ethic.
Yeah, you know, Terry, I always think when I hear people say, well, you know, he was one of us. He was such a common man. The truth is, he's the all-time Renaissance man. I mean, he is one of the most complex figures in American history. He wrote 33 books. He was a nuclear scientist. He was a soldier. There are so many components to Jimmy Carter's life. It's impossible to view him in any one context.
You're absolutely right. I mean, his mastery of so many things was amazing. When he told me that he was going to write, he was working on a novel not too many years ago. I was amazed, and I asked him about what. He said, well, it's really based on my research of the Carter family during the Revolutionary War. And the novel is about Georgia in the Revolutionary War, called The Hornet's Nest. And it's not bad.
Not bad. 33 books in, 32 bestsellers, not to mention.
Yeah, and Terry, you speak of traveling with him when he was running for governor, traveling to rural parts of Georgia like Archery. Speak about the interaction that he had with the people, how they received the former president. We have been speaking to people all week, and they've been quite emotional, just reflecting on the one-on-one personal experiences they had.
Well, there's so many, and he clearly related to the common person. I mean, he considered himself a common person. And despite all of his accomplishments and intelligence and the like, but he related to people. He loved common people. I have witnessed that time and time again, where he's talking to a fellow fisherman, or a fellow painter, or a fellow poet, or just the guy down the street, and he relates to them. He never aspired to be anything more than one of them.
Is there any understanding to his unending ambition? And by that, I mean not just running for political office or being an American president, but trying to learn, trying to be the best at everything that he did. And most of us get to a certain age, we either stop learning or stop wanting to learn. For Jimmy Carter, he never seemed to lose any of the fire in his stomach to succeed.
No, he did not. Everyone knew he was ambitious. We didn't know how ambitious he was. And I suspect he didn't know how ambitious he was at various stages of life either. But he clearly was always working, always wanting to contribute. And his values and his principles were rock fast and stood the test of time. That was 100 years. We were fortunate to be able to see that whole side of him for so long.
I think the concept that you're both talking about in terms of him being a Renaissance man, as you said, Jeff, or Terry, all of these different areas of expertise he kept adding kind of to his personal library, reflected in the work that he did and the diversity of the work he did over so many generations, kind of bringing personal experience to each thing he did. And so important for those of us who are kind of watching the events that will take place between now and the end of the week, because so many of the stops along the way represent these different layers to a very complex person and legacy.
And Terry, you've known him at many points in his life, from high school up into the White House. Do you recall the moment he said he wanted to run for the White House, run for the highest office in the land?
Well, I wasn't privy to that moment, so I can't tell you that I can recall it. I was surprised to learn about it. There were a few people that knew about it at the time, I learned it later when it was a much broader audience.
Terry,
but he pulled it off.
He did pull it off.
Let's close it out with one story from your life and your interactions with him that seems to stand out more than any other as you contemplate his passing.
That's a pretty tough task, but I guess as you've been rushed with reflections on Jimmy and Rosalind Carter over the last few days, one thing that stood out to me is how much I enjoyed knowing the people he knew and getting to know the people he knew. There's so many people that were important to him that didn't live 100 years and are no longer on the scene. People who were his friends and through the luck of the draw became my friends. And I think about them a lot, and I wish they could. I know they're watching from wherever they are, and watching with great pride this great tribute to this remarkable man and woman, his wife, who have contributed so much to so many people all over the world. It's remarkable.
Terry Adamson, thank you so much. Appreciate your perspective on such a significant day. Thanks so much.